Hey guys, I'm RJ. This is Kevin.
What up?
We're here with 60 Grit Radio. Essentially, all we're doing today is finishing off Gary Johnson's Townhall. So we're just going to get that started real quick here.
Cannot wait.
So you remember where we left off?
Oh, I remember exactly where we left off with my favorite person talking about the different THC levels.
Right on. Well, we're going to just start right at her again. We're going to rewatch it. Probably say a lot of the same shit we said last time. We'll see.
Thank you. Governors, there's been very little understanding of the differences between low to zero potency marijuana that's been associated with helping kids with seizures and helping adults with pain, which is completely different from the high THC pot that has become the norm in Colorado. And we know that it's our understanding that you're supporting full-blown nationwide marijuana commercialization. And
trigger words, full-blown commercialization.
Ensure that our nation's youth are educated on the risks of today's high-potency pot, and also wanted to know if you'll be supportive of potency limits on all forms of marijuana.
Go ahead.
Okay, good. I'm glad we both wanted to pause. I wish there were time in this town hall for her to discuss what those negative side effects are. What is so dangerous and deadly that the youth needs to be aware of outside of you might get a little bit more hungry, a little bit more sleepy. This sounds like something out of the 70s to me.
That's true, but at the same time, you have to, like, that there's different amounts of fucking, like, high you get. And, like, there is people that react differently to the shit. And to say that, like, I wouldn't say that kids don't need educated on it, but when did it become the narrative that that was the state's job to begin with?
Well,
like,
yeah.
Why is that their job to teach your children about how the horrors of marijuana? If you want to falsely educate your kids about a drug, that's on you. But yeah, most of the crimes that have been committed with weed, I would basically assume that they were high anyway. You know what I mean? It's generally not related to the crime. There has been some instances where some people have maybe jumped off a building or something like that, but a lot of people self-medicate for depression with weed too. So it makes you kind of wonder if maybe they were like the rest of the people that use marijuana responsibly, or just that day did some other shit.
Right. And you touched on something that's got me a little fired up here, because you bring up a valid point where I was just originally upset about the terminology there and sort of just the whole boogeyman approach. She made it just sound like, oh my God, what's going to happen? It just where it just was overplayed. I agree with what you said.
Yeah, no.
The youth does need educated on it. But then when you went to elaborate on them, when did it become the government's job to do that? And it just sort of a little bubble burst in my brain where I thought of all the different things like sex education and this and that, where it seems like the only thing they rely on your parents to teach you is how to pay your taxes and how your credit works.
Because they don't teach you that in school, and you get pissed about it.
Yeah, they don't teach you that in school, but they teach you, they teach you about sex education, and they have to teach you about drugs, all these things that I thought that my parents did a good enough job of teaching me about on their own.
Did your parents have the conversation with you?
Which one?
The birds and the bees.
Mm-hmm.
Did they?
Yeah, well, I put them in a precarious situation.
Oh, no.
Though. So that, yeah. My parents were very smart, and they had a program that would send them emails of certain websites were found on the computer.
Oh. My parents just made fun of me for that shit. But they never was like, I need to explain what's going on in these videos. I still didn't really know.
It was one of those father-son conversations where it was like, hey, man, your mom doesn't need to see this stuff. Like, it went well. But so what happened to that? Why can't that be a parental conversation?
Yeah, your kid watches porn, you catch him, then you explain it to him.
Yeah, your kid smokes pot, you catch him, you explain it to him.
Or you're smart, you tell them about it before they get there. Again, let's see what Gary says, I guess.
Well, you're talking about kids with seizures, and I was talking with a researcher in Washington State where a young lady, 12-year-old, was having 300 epileptic seizures a week. She was given 40 milligrams of CBD, and the seizures went from 300 to 30. But then she was given whole plant CBD, whole plant, which contained THC, and the seizures went to 2. So that's something. You know what we need to do is deschedule marijuana as a class 1 narcotic. There needs to be research and development on marijuana. And in no way are we supporting kids being able to use marijuana. In no way, shape, or form.
Should there be limits on
In no
the
way,
potency?
shape.
Well, but as I was just pointing out, because CBD doesn't contain any THC, legislatures around the country are embracing it because it's a dramatic improvement, 300 seizures to 30 seizures. But if you go to whole plant CBD, which contains THC, the seizures may be eliminated completely.
You're talking about CBD oil, which is completely different than THC. And THC, it is what has been associated to be harmful for developing brains. And I personally am very sensitive. My own son had over 80 seizures a day, and I went through that same experience.
Of course he
and
did.
I totally understand the desperation of a family to find any
Sure.
cure.
Sure.
But that marijuana that you're talking about that's tied to Charlotte's oil, that's what's been on the national media, is completely different than the majority of the pot being sold in Colorado today. And
With the kind of pot that's being grown in Colorado, lady, like, it was fine from the get-go. You got here because of that.
I have a different problem with this that I'd like to point out, and it may be viewed as minor, but it's a pattern you see often with these candidates. He contradicts himself immediately. He begins by telling a story about a child who uses marijuana to lessen the number of seizures that she has per week, and then immediately follows up, says, we in no way, shape, or form are going to consent to use for children. And it's just, and again, while I get what he was trying to say, it's just a little, he just goes for the 2 talking points. He follows up with the, okay, well, this was a great situation, and then turns around and says, but in no way, shape, or form we let children use it, rather than saying what he actually thinks is, well, if the child needs it for medicine, yes, we'll give it to the child. But he doesn't want to say that because that's not what people want to hear. So he immediately, it's that political doublespeak.
Okay.
Or that's just my opinion of it, where he took the easy way out when he followed it up.
I think what I heard there, it was when he said, like, in no way would we let children use it, is he's not saying they would sell it recreationally to children. Because doesn't he go on to say that the seizures went down even further with THC?
With plant THC. Yeah. But what I'm saying is at no point in this conversation was recreational use even brought up.
Oh, okay. So he just wants to make sure he's on the record.
He wants to cover that base of recreation. And we were never talking about that. We were talking about regulation of THC levels for medicinal use. Right. But again, because all he is a walking talking point, he has to go ahead and just make sure that his ass is covered. And I love the freeze frame, by the way. That is the look that I see. That's the Gary Johnson face that's always in my mind.
She's a little reminiscent of Hillary there. Maybe that's just
more like she looks like Monica.
It's been very difficult and very confusing to educate on the harms of marijuana in our state because there's a perception
because it's not harmful.
It's completely harmful when we've got marijuana that's up to 95%.
Love Taco Bell more,
which is unprecedented.
You know, in Colorado, there were increases in marijuana-related hospital visits, apparently traffic deaths, school suspensions. Are you
school suspensions? That's because okay, how can you throw that in there? Go ahead.
I was just. Can we rewatch that little bit, actually?
Yeah, let's go back a little bit. For one thing, I just want to say the school suspensions, that should not be thrown in there. There are private schools in Colorado, I'm certain, and so they are allowed to have their own policy on it. And because they're not saying, when they say school suspensions, it could be university, that's just a blanket topic, just a blanket term. Once again, just to get a reaction. It's just a reactionary thing, and that's the shit that bothers me with this whole horse and pony show that we see today is you see nothing but you see a lot of half truths and half points being brought up.
And then you start to wonder if the principals were being told, hey, you got to start suspending kids for this shit because they were making a lot more money, or the state coffers were making a lot more money off it being criminalized. But
media is completely different
I'm sorry,
than the majority of the pot being sold in Colorado today. And it's been very difficult to educate on the harms of marijuana in our state because there's a perception that it's completely harmful when we've got marijuana that's up to 95% THC concentration levels, which is unprecedented.
She said that she just misspoke there, and it made me laugh because she meant to say harmless. What she said was, and the thought is that it's completely harmful. And so she accidentally maybe told the truth there. I don't know. But I just wanted to point, it just made me laugh. Sorry.
Yeah. And hasn't the predominant thought been that it's completely harmful though? Actually, isn't that what they've been trying to get across? And because they're seeing there's no issue with these people that they're throwing in jail and fining the shit out of, they've just won through popular support. It's not like they're not fighting an uphill battle. Just a fucking bunch of stone martyrs, really.
Colorado, there were increases in marijuana-related hospital visits, apparently traffic deaths, school suspensions.
Okay, he says apparently traffic deaths, but the first thing he says there with more hospital visits, like there's been so many people that never tried it and don't know what to expect because they always didn't do it because it was illegal. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that says, I would smoke it if it was legal. They just worship the law so fucking much that they don't want to like cross that boundary.
Well, and also, again, who's to say, because we aren't in charge of how that question is asked and how that research is. You have to remember that whenever someone's presenting something to you, if they can find a way to make the evidence look good for them, then they'll do it. That who's to say the higher instance of marijuana related hospital visits wasn't people who were sick that were seeking marijuana as treatment.
Okay.
That would absolutely make those numbers skyrocket.
Yeah.
Marijuana related medical visits. I mean, if you but yeah, exactly. But that's what they do. So if that's the point they want to bring up, and I'm not saying he did this, but I'm saying there's no way for us to know that whoever was researching this didn't do that.
I've heard that number thrown around a lot, undisputed. And just with all the channels I follow, I think I would see it disputed somewhere if it wasn't true. But the rebuttal remains the same. It's just
well, and also you got to remember who has the ability to get medical records. You know what I mean? Like who in our realm that would fight that claim? Who's going to be able to actually go through and check anybody's medical records to see, who's there? To, how do you
pharma wants it.
Yeah. How do you fact check that?
Yeah.
You make a valid point. So that's all I was saying.
Valid point.
How would you deal with other sort of follow-on effects?
Actually, overall, Anderson, all the statistics were pointing north. Not significantly, but all the statistics were actually north. You may be pointing at some aberrations within that.
Yeah, there was a Northwestern University and University of Colorado.
That is the first time I've seen like an honest libertarian trait out of him, and you'll see it again in the debate, or we might have already seen it. But he's like, not a lot. Like he's calling out the retort. Prior, like he's not expecting you to Google it and then be like, oh, but it's only better by 0.25%. He's just letting you know that it's either the same or a little bit better, essentially.
Rare moment of honesty.
Yeah, but like it makes you kind of buy into him a little bit there, and that kind of like just consistent honesty is what I would like to see out of him, but we haven't seen it through much of this at all.
Rising by 44% after marijuana was legalized 2012 to 2014.
I just think that so much research and development needs to take place that hasn't taken place, and that marijuana products deal or compete directly with legal prescription drugs that statistically kill 100,000 people a year, and there are no documented deaths due to marijuana.
So he's not actually calling out the lobby, but
that concern.
He is actually. Do you mind pausing and going back to So I like and dislike what just happened here. I want to, if we can go back to where Anderson, what he talks about, when he talks about the universities, you'll notice again, and this is why.
Some aberrations within that.
Okay, yeah, you can pause it here for 1 second, because I want to point out what I don't like about this, and that is that if you notice, answer his question once again is just by repeating his last answer's talking point.
Okay, yeah, I did notice that.
You probably, you
Yeah, he
picked up
didn't
on
really
that.
answer the question.
Yeah, he dodges
But-
the question at least, and then until he can formulate a way, which it's a common trick.
Yeah, and the talking point he makes his way too. I got to give him credit too.
Northwestern University and
Sorry, I'll start this without us talking over it. But did I talk over your point?
Oh no, I just want my goal here is to point out some of these things so people start to notice them, because it's very easy to be entranced during speech and when you're watching a show and not catch these little things that once you notice them, you won't stop noticing them.
I got you.
Overall, Anderson, all the statistics were pointing north. Not significantly, but all the statistics were actually north. You may be pointing at some aberrations within that.
Yeah, there was a Northwestern University and University of Colorado study about ER visits rising by 44% after marijuana was legalized 2012 to 2014.
I just think that so much research and development needs to take place that hasn't taken place, and that marijuana products deal or compete directly with legal prescription drugs that statistically kill 100,000 people a year, and there are no documented deaths due to marijuana. And that concern that you're expressing needs to be taken into account.
There have been some deaths in Colorado, and there is some really concerning data coming out.
But essentially, you're saying more studies should be done.
Yes, something that by descheduling marijuana as a class 1 narcotic can take place.
Matthew Larson is here. He's a teacher
Okay,
in New York City.
Yeah,
so he's made up his
I
mind.
wanted to let them finish, but I had just once again.
I'm gonna let you finish.
Once again, did you notice? Because that's why I wanted to hear what Anderson said. Did you notice what he said? He said Northwestern University of Colorado did a study in which they found that there was a 44% increase in ER visits since the legalization of marijuana from 2012 to 2014. What should be glaringly obvious
because of marijuana.
It's not because of marijuana. It's just a general statement. There are a number of factors with all the people vacationing there.
Yeah.
You know how many of those people probably were visit tourists with all the snow that happened? And all I'm saying is there is an infinite number of reasons why people go to the ER, and they just throw this little topical, just typical bait to try to make you, the average viewer, think like, oh my God, it's fucking Dodge in Colorado now. It's Sin City down there. Half the people, there's a 50% increase in injuries since people start smoking pot.
44% does seem awful large for it just to be hospital visits attributed to marijuana. It really does. I will give you that, but I could see it rising either way.
I definitely, I'm not arguing.
I heard him say that. I thought he misrepresented the quote. I thought like he just said it wrong.
No,
not so much as it was actually just 44% since marijuana has been legalized. I was hoping he wasn't willing to cite that openly.
But if you really pay attention to the questions that are asked, and you start to pay attention to how there's a reason that that good writing is, there's a reason people like certain movies that, good writing goes a long way. Your choice of words can really make the difference. And so when people are asking these questions, it's important you really kind of break it down and be like, what did he actually just say? And then apply your own logic to it.
Yeah. I just give benefit of the doubt to him.
I'd never do anymore. Nope.
Secretary Clinton, Matthew.
Good evening, governors. As president, you intend to eliminate the Common Core standards as well as the Department of Education. In doing so, what plan does your administration have to ensure all children in all 50 states are accessing high quality education and not just those in states who have already adopted it?
Leave it to the states, because the federal government has fucked it up so bad that they're not getting a high quality education, even though we spend more per student than any other developed nation in the world. Like, okay, so you're telling me you're a New York City teacher, so you're one of the strongest teachers unions in the nation. I can see why you don't want to see that dissolved. But there would still be state control of the education system. So better be his fucking answer. Did you have anything to say?
I'm on the same page with you on that one.
Well, first of all, the Department of Education, I do believe, needs to be eliminated. Let's take New York as an example. New York sends Washington 13 cents. It goes through the bureaucratic wash and dry cycle, and it comes back to New York 11 cents. How do you like that equation? And then the Department of Education says that you need to do A, B, C, and D to get the 11 cents. And it actually costs another 4 pennies for New York to comply with that. I just think that if we gave education to the states, 50 laboratories of innovation and best practice, that we would genuinely have that innovation and best practice that other states would emulate. You know, we'd also have failure that everyone else would avoid. But one size fits all, it just doesn't work.
In Massachusetts, we put in high stakes.
I'm going to pause anyway. You had something you wanted to say?
No, I just thought you'd be kind of happy.
That's
what you would want to hear.
I've seen Gary Johnson be unapologetically libertarian about something, at least to the extent of handing it over to control of the states and not to the parent. So, you know, like, huge leap, and he defended it instead of just being like, actually, I think we should just cut back spending and put more of it into the teacher's hands.
Yeah.
You know, like, he didn't do that. And I don't want to say I'm proud of him because I think he's a shill, but as proud of him as I could be of Donald Trump for an equal.
that is the best way you could put it. That is the best thing I've heard him say. Like you said, he actually sounded a little bit like a libertarian there, and it made sense. He made good points for his argument with the one size fits all thing was my favorite, and pointing out the pros and cons and how they would benefit.
That's why I hated school the fucking most, though. Like, if you're like one of the bottom students, school is great for you. If you're one of the middle of the line students, it's okay for you. But if you're one of those kids that finishes your homework before they're done with the lesson and misses all the fucking lesson plans prior but passes the test, it's boring as shit. And like the fucking glove approach, the education, I don't know about you, but that was the most like excruciating part of it all, was just the overwhelming mediocrity, not only from the students but the teaching staff. It was just one teacher at least fucked a student that everybody knew about.
Mm-hmm.
She was so into high school sports she named her fucking kid's score. I couldn't fucking stand it. So good for him a little bit, saying, you know, this fucking one size fits all approach. I do like that because Bush started it with No Child Left Behind.
Yeah, and this was one thing that I just want to throw in there. This was always my anti-Bernie argument was, if you want the government to take over the college education, look at what they've done to the education before that. That's really what you want,
right?
Is to be just in that standardized. No one said it better than he just did. The one size fits all. It doesn't work. Kids are different, and I did have the same experience you had, where I left school feeling like it was there to train me on how to be a good drone. It was there to teach me how to be good enough to do my job and not good enough to really take anyone else's job.
They cared more about the amount of like papers you kept a hold of in a folder than they cared about the scores you got on the test that actually covered the information presented to you. That's how fucking bullshit the system is. And that was just because, if you ask me in my conspiracy theory fucking tinfoil hat, that's because they wanted you there for attendance, because that's where they get their money. If you weren't there for the days, you couldn't put the shit in your folder. And it was just one more fucking thing. But that's, again, the federal government's control has made the money tied to attendance, not, you know, an education of the students, because then the teachers union would be a little bit upset because a lot of their fucking high school football fuckers.
Right. Yeah, a lot of kids don't give a shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's see what Slick Willie has to add to this.
Good old Mr. Gun Grabbing Bill Will.
Can I make it? I'm going to predict that he is going to go. He is not going to follow Gary on this one. I have a feeling he's going to try to make the compromise, split the difference, the big government difference. We'll see.
I think he's going to go order a pizza.
In grades 4, 8, and 10, when I was governor, and you had to pass those tests. We did away with social promotion so that you didn't graduate from high school when you really had to check into remedial reading and remedial math as soon as you got to community college.
Glad to know he's getting back into standardized testing. Just when you think you're free.
Mm-hmm.
Our test scores have been highest in the nation, both English and math, ever since. We did it with the increment in funding. That was the trade-off with the legislature. But in terms of quality, the quality became #1 in the country. I've opposed Common Core in Massachusetts because I think what we already have there is better. I think there's a lot that the government can do to make college education more affordable. A lot of it involves jobs and making sure that apprenticeships in companies such as University of Massachusetts Lowell had.
I'm gonna just pause here because we're not on video, and it just makes my head hurt. Like I can just rub my head. I'm like, you're a libertarian somewhere. You're a libertarian somewhere. I just get it.
But what, right? I normally I'm not that was I right guy, but like what did Billy just come out here and do? He just went opposite. He is not. This dude's not a libertarian. Like, come on.
We're gonna give it.
Raytheon are available for students. I think we need a lot more online education. Many people can't afford to take a year or two off to pursue the bricks and mortar education. And I think the 4-year Ivy-clad bricks.
A lot of people can't afford to take a year or two off to get an education. Why is that? Does it have anything to do with the massive amount of government money flooding into the colleges through federally backed student loans? So let's just get them a little more involved, and let's get some job programs in there. And now they're going to owe us their labor and money.
Mortar education is just, it may not be a dodo bird, but it's not going to be for everybody. We have to have more tech so that we're preparing people for real world jobs, not that everybody's going to go to the Ivy League colleges and then there won't be any jobs.
I want to, we have some breaking news that we're just learning about that I want you both to weigh in on. We've just confirmed a knife attack in London, which investigators believe to be a terror attack based on early evidence. 1 person is dead there. 5 others have been wounded. Officials say 1 of the injured appears to be an American. The suspect is in custody. Earlier tonight, you mentioned lone wolf attacks in the United States. How do you convince Americans that you have the plan to prevent these kind of attacks and to respond to these kind of attacks, not just here at home, but internationally?
If their answer is anything but I don't,
that are going to say, look, this stuff is going to happen. When you look at what happened in Nice the other day, I mean, this is a situation that exists in this country in 10,000 different places every single day, where a crowd could be driven into by a vehicle. Yes, President of the United States, Vice President of the United States, we need to be vigilant to potentially from happening, but these things are going to happen.
So the message, these things are going to happen, is there a role for the president to play? And
absolutely.
Save him, Bill. Save him, Bill.
About his task force. Well, that's growing, that's dynamic government. That's growing government in areas to address problems that we really have. But, we can go and look at government and also identify things that just haven't worked forever and get rid of those things. But yes, we will be vigilant at the helm.
Overall, his filler wasn't bad. His talking points of "we will be vigilant" over the helm, a little bit off the message that he was also sending in the same sentence.
Yeah, a little bit. And are you starting to get the feeling that William Weld is Gary Johnson's handler? That Gary Johnson might at least be wanting to be libertarian, at least part of him, and that Will Weld is there to, I'm going to call him every name I can think of, because he just seems to be an 8-faced man over there in the VP chair. I feel like that's why you see he does not look pleased with what the president is saying here, the presidential candidate is saying here, the future. And man, it hurts me a little bit. This is a situation where
I think he is Gary Johnson's Dick Cheney.
He's Gary Johnson's Dick Cheney. I just have to say something about this breaking news that happened there with the London terror attack. Yeah, you have no control over when terror attacks happen, but that's an awfully convenient breaking news thing to just be there. All of his other cards seem to be prepared. And I'm not saying that it was a show or that it was fake. All I'm saying is, like, they jumped on it. Those bodies aren't even cold. And they're using it as a political topic on the town hall. Now, those are those of you out there that are listening to this that would say that reeks of false flag right there. And whatever, we can have that conversation in private. But
you can have it on Bread and or Bad Dinner Guests even.
Yeah, that's our other show is for that. You want to come talk? We can talk false flags some other time. But this is disgusting.
Because it's CNN, and I feel like they're the same as the Clintons in that they want to push the military budget staying up there and all those other things. They didn't win the last time they basically asked him this question. I think that's why they were willing to bring it in. Also, because if he would have been like, you know, like faltered under the pressure of it happening on here, they could have used it as a blog or later or a blurb later.
Yeah, it would have been, it would have went viral. But
I definitely don't buy for Gary Johnson's town hall that they like either did it on a soundstage or actually had a man stab a bunch of people in London.
Oh yeah, again, and I
don't mean to laugh at you.
Right? No, you're not laughing at me. Essentially, like again, I haven't done any research that would make me think that this is a false flag. What I wanted to point it out because there are definitely people that are going to jump to that, and there are people that are going to scream that. All I'm saying is, it's disgusting that it's used as a talking point in a town hall as it happened.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is these things happen. That body isn't even cold yet. And they're talking about it. There are people still in the hospital, and now those people are a talking point for a presidential town hall. And there's about 3 of these a week now. So you could have used any other instance. You did not need to break this news and then ask it. And it just felt so like, oh, we've got this breaking news here, and I'm just going to go ahead. I have this follow-up question for you about it. Like that the way they set that up for that to be part of, they could have told us the breaking news. And then they didn't have to segue it into a question like that. It feels dirty to me.
How quick they use it, but I guess I'm just so desensitized to it. I gotta tell you, you would hate the shit out of me if I was a producer at CNN because I would have done the same exact thing. I would have been in his fucking ear like, "Hey, this shit just happened. Spring it on him," because you know he's not gonna have a statement prepared about it.
Fair enough, but to me, this is why we have the populace that we do that doesn't think with their brain. They react emotionally to everything.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. That's all right.
I'm completely okay with it.
For organized groups such as ISIS, as opposed to a perhaps unpredictable lone wolf, nothing's too good for those guys. So you need SIGINT and HUMINT. You need
signals.
So now he's using the terrorist argument because anybody that says they're a part of ISIS is now ISIS. And in the same breath as saying this is you got to worry about the lone wolf scenario separate from the ISIS scenario. Most of them, we don't find out they're in ISIS till after it happened. Now it's just going to be assumed when you Google a few things because he's going to build a 1,000-man FBI task force to reckon with the NSA. Just back to status going to state.
Signal intelligence, human intelligence on the ground. Bill Casey, the former head of the CIA, was a champion of human intelligence on the ground.
Yeah, the CIA has always been known for
substitute for
being
that.
a
So that
moral
involves infiltration of those groups by whatever means available.
Let's go back to our audience questions. Why don't you meet Robin Sumner? She's from Los Angeles,
Not even
California.
a moment
She attended
of
the Democratic
silence.
convention last week to support Bernie Sanders. She now says she's
Cold as
leaning
ice.
toward Green Party candidate Jill Stein. She has not yet made up her mind. Welcome. What's your question?
Thank you. I'm a Bernie supporter, and I'm disappointed about the prospect of voting for someone else. But I've decided that I have to vote for someone that aligns with my values. How are you similar to Bernie Sanders? And what
You're
would you say?
How are you similar to Bernie Sanders? Hey, Gary, I'm not going to tell you anything else about this except at the end we're going to throw you the biggest bone ever. Targeting for the last 3 weeks. Hey, we just got this lady and she loves the shit out of Bernie Sanders. I'm surprised her hair isn't dyed purple.
Those aren't her glasses.
Those are definitely her glasses. I just saw a lady that looked very similar to this today, and her husband was crazy.
Was she 80?
I don't know.
Did she still have her glasses from 1954?
She very well may have. Very well may
Either
have.
way, regardless of how ridiculous this person is, actually adding to how ridiculous this person is, how do you ask that question?
She did.
Or how do you make the statement of I'm a Bernie supporter, and as much as I can't stand not voting for him, I need to find someone to vote for someone who aligns with my values. Well, if Bernie's out of the race, him being the only Democratic socialist on the block, I don't think that's possible, lady.
Yeah.
All I'm saying.
I'm interested to see what he does here, but it's definitely like it's a bone. There's no doubt. It's sell yourself to me.
Man.
Exactly. It's just, hey man, this is what I am. Tell me what you're going to do for me. How is that not lobbying on national television?
Similar on about 75% of what's out there. And of course, that would be marriage equality, women's right to choose, legalizing marijuana. Let's stop with the military interventions, that crony capitalism is alive and well. But from an economic standpoint, Here's my hypothesis, and I might be wrong. If Bernie supporters are really looking for income equality, I don't think that is something that government can accomplish. Taking from Peter to Rob Paul, that's an equation that Peter
I'm
really
glad
loves.
you got that quote right.
But if
Gary.
Bernie supporters are looking for equal opportunity, I think that that is something that can be accomplished. And as governor of New Mexico, arguably having vetoed more legislation than all the other governors in the country combined, I vetoed a whole.
And then your budget still raised. Explain that to me. So eventually, you may have vetoed that shit a bunch of times, but it had to have still gotten passed, or else your budget wouldn't have consistently raised. But
see, this is what I'm talking about. They do that stuff, you know. They
I'm tougher than Bernie Sanders.
facts.
Look at what I did.
I climbed 7 mountains.
A whole lot of legislation that wasn't about equal opportunity. It was about giving a continued upper hand to those that could pay for influence and the ability to game the system, if you will. So in politics, you can definitely stand up against gaming the system. In politics, you can definitely stand up for equal opportunity.
I want to ask you about fundraising. Donald Trump announced today he raised $80 million last month. Hillary Clinton
You can
raised
stand
$90
up for
million.
equal opportunity, but what does that actually mean to him? I mean, like, everybody is free to pursue their own thing, or does it mean?
Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what he means
Sounds
because
good.
it sounds good, and every single person who views that will apply that to their moral compass.
Just fill in what you think. I mean, you want to like me. I'm not Trump.
With numbers like that, I think your last filing that I looked at today said you raised a total of $1.4 million since you announced, not last month, but since you announced. How do you compete?
Well, I've been more or less in charge of the individual fundraising as opposed to the web-based.
I'm told you actually like.
I like fundraising. I was Pete Wilson's national finance chair when he ran for president.
What do you like about it? I can't imagine. It's got to be the most miserable thing, making those calls.
If you can't sell yourself, what can you sell? You know, we shouldn't be in this business if we didn't want to sell ourselves. But I've noticed a distinct uptick in our fund.
He just said everything I've ever wanted to say about a politician. That's all.
Okay, I thought you were going to draw some conspiracy theory ties. And no, they're there to sell themselves. That's for sure.
That's all any politician has ever been there for.
That's just me on the telephone, and on a good day, I'll do the better part of $1 million in a day. And the web-based fundraising that Gary knows more about is also picked way up. But beyond that, when you get further down the election cycle, it's not like the old days where if somebody had a 2-to-1 edge in their campaign account that they were going to win the election on that account. Not with the amount of free publicity from the debates and the fact that campaigns can move 10 points in the polls based on something going viral on the web. Those things didn't exist.
So to get in the debates, what do you have to be at? What, 15%?
Yes.
So
you don't
move up a little bit more in the polls, but you're not.
Well, and money's part of that. Next reporting session, I think you're going to see significant jump in our fundraising. But no, it's not going to be in line with Trump or Clinton. But to me, that just speaks volumes of what we are generating on the amount of money that we have. I mean, this 12% poll here by Fox today, just now. Wow, we do the same thing in office, providing the best bang for the buck.
This is Mohammed Shaker. He's a college student, a Muslim American veteran. He also is chair of the Republican Liberty Caucus of Tampa Bay. He's leaning toward voting for you both. Mohammed, what's your question?
Thank you. I'm a Muslim, an American, and I'm a veteran. I'm also a Republican, and I believe the government needs to abide by the Constitution. Vote for Donald Trump, and I'm not going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Why are you a better choice for somebody like me?
Again, please pander to my people.
Encompass the best of what Republicans are supposed to
I covered all of the rest.
Smaller government, and they don't do a very good job at that.
Right.
Perhaps we're really good at civil liberties, something that Democrats haven't stood up for mandatory sentencing, and the fact that we have the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world, and that we continue to militarily intervene. We both reject the notion that libertarians are isolationists. We're not isolationists, we're non-interventionists. We don't want to get involved in regime change that really has the unintended consequence of making the world less safe.
Let me just say,
We also don't want to be forced to pay for a military that operates on our behalf and then can rob us to use us elsewhere. We're pretty much isolationists. Gary Johnson's a liar. Do you have anything?
No,
okay,
no.
Back to gun grabbing Bill.
I thank you for your service. I listened to everything
Thank you, sir, so much for your people.
I really want your vote.
How's that getting
If I could
applause?
just throw an arrow in the air. To me, the real reason might be that we are both inclusive to the tips of our toes, great, big, open, loving, if you will, society.
I love your people, sir.
And we know that this country has always been a melting pot. We know that's the strength, the sinew of this country. We want to
melt
keep
in your pot.
You know, Governor Johnson, I've heard you use some words tonight. I don't think I've heard a politician use in a long time. At one point you said, "I may be wrong," which I haven't heard a politician say that in a long time. And just now you said, well, perhaps we're this,
Don't
perhaps
we're, you learn that from that rapper.
Those are
Well,
I haven't heard a politician sort of.
he's just an elegant guy, and
Well, no, but I mean, it's rare to hear someone.
He's got them all embarrassed and
maybe I'm wrong, but
flustered.
this is
I
what
don't know
think.
why I went to
Well,
Southern
if
accent,
you
but he
tell
just
the
makes
truth, you don't have to
like a
remember
little Southern
anything.
belle there.
That's
He
been a
looks like-
credo of mine forever.
Which is why you see, and
In that vein, if you tell the truth, that means you'll admit mistakes and make plenty of mistakes. But how often is a mistake made worse just because of the denial of the mistake? And there's no quicker way to get after fixing something than first acknowledging it.
I want you both to meet Tamia Taylor. She's been on my program. She was wounded in the Dallas shooting that also killed 5 police officers. She's a Democrat. She says she's still undecided. I'm so glad you are here tonight. Thanks for being here. What's your question?
I was shot in the leg during the protest, teaching my 4 sons about peaceful.
Ma'am, I just want to tell you that everybody has a right to their legs, and I'm so sorry that you're
protesting and coming together in the African American community and how we can show unity. As America, what is your how do you feel about the Black Lives Matter movement?
What it has done.
Do you want to give a prediction of his thoughts towards the Black Lives Matter movement? I might just start doing this entire show in a Southern drawl. It's just so much better.
Do it. I'm digging it. Oh, I don't know. My prediction radar is thrown off at this point, just because I did not expect her to cook that grenade and toss it to him like that. I should have, considering who she is and what she has just been through, and being on CNN right now, that probably I should have seen that question coming. But you know what? I can't believe that they saved this for after the softballs. Like, you would have thought they would have not. Like, they're putting into the ringer here. He's going to make someone upset regardless of how he answers this, or he's going to give the most vague, general answer.
I think he's going to make some people that he doesn't give a fuck about upset by giving a vague, general answer. And only because he's still trying to. This is a Bernie Sanders bone again. This is pick up Bernie Sanders supporters. Bernie supposedly handed the microphone over to some Black Lives Matter protesters.
I saw that. Yeah.
Most of us say he was robbed of his microphone. Either way, so I think he's going to get. I think he's just going to sell himself out here.
Dude, I will predict that Slick Willie will at some point step in and try to make and try to bridge the gap.
What I would love to see him do here is somehow bring this back to the drug war and the overreach of the federal government. Bring it back to some libertarian principles of non-aggression and how that has brought the Black Lives Matter movement to the point that it's at, where you have so many disenfranchised young men in prison. Bring it back to that. I don't think he's going to do that.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It's CNN, so probably not, but yeah.
My head's been in the sand on this. That's what it's done for me. And that I think we've all had our heads in the sand. And let's wake up. This discrimination does exist. It has existed. And for me personally, slap, slap, wake up.
I think we have a national emergency in the number of male Black youth who are unemployed, without prospects. There are 4 times as likely to be incarcerated.
Please say why,
if
Mr.
they have
Weld.
intersection with law enforcement as white people are.
Why?
Their educational opportunities are not there. We have to get them into education and just concentrate the power of the government, trying to make sure that there are jobs available for them. It's a national
government jobs, as Mr. Wells.
Concentrate the power of government. Can I have things a libertarian never says for 300, please?
Well, yes.
But also high five, because we, as much as we didn't want to predict this one, we got it. I mean, what did Gary just do there? He
softballed and then Weld went right to where you said.
And then Weld, and he even still, he doesn't want to step on this mine either. He's not really saying anything either. He's just saying the same vague shit, like you said. Tell us why. Tell us why this is happening. All you're saying is, oh yeah, we need to help get black people more educated. Like, you're making it sound like he's not pointing out that they're being targeted. He's just like, yeah, you know, they're not as educated. They interact with the interact with the
what
police.
Government can do for you. Yeah. That's what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Emergency, and when there's a national emergency, the government has to respond, libertarian or no libertarian.
I want to take a quick break. We're going to have more with the governors coming up. Questions from the audience.
Don't worry, guys. I did some shit. No break. Kind of an applause break, but that's mainly for us. And more applause.
And welcome back to the CNN Libertarian Town Hall with candidates Gary Johnson.
They use that term loosely.
I want to go to the audience. Gary Johnson is an attorney from Long Island. Even though he's a registered libertarian, he's currently leaning toward voting for Donald Trump. Gary, welcome. What's your question?
Thank you, Anderson. Good evening.
I'm just going to let him go.
The conclusion of FBI Director Comey that no reasonable prosecutor would charge Hillary Clinton with a crime with regard to her handling of State Department emails. What is your position on that? Do you agree with that conclusion?
This is his chance to grab a bone from Republican vote. Because the only thing he can do here is either like make Republicans who also want to see her indicted his friend, because they're constantly pandering to the Bernie supporter right now, and the Bernie supporters want to see her indicted too. So this is his to fuck up.
Oh yeah, we're back to the softballs here, I think, because I mean, I don't assume he's been trying. Doesn't seem to really be trying to grab any Hillary supporters.
I'm going to guess he fucks it up.
This report with
or Bill answers.
I do agree with it, and I think he asked the right question. Would a reasonable prosecutor bring this case? And my conclusion was there was insufficient evidence of criminal intent. Under Justice Department rules, you're not supposed to indict a...
And see, Bill Weld is the handler, because he won't let Gary's answer. He gives you typical fucking
Gary
big government.
The same thing in the past.
That's...
Yeah, like he's only backing up things Gary has said, but he's a close friend of the Clintons, to be honest, as far as we can tell. But it's so upsetting to see him constantly not only reinforce the state and the necessity of the state, but to back these fucking just the worst parts of the state that the state has to offer.
Right. I mean, like, even just to go back to the last one when he mentioned, like, when there's an emergency, it's the federal government's response. Okay, well, but also, you know, there's state stuff there too. Like, it's not, again, it's reinforcing that whole idea of be scared. You need the government. You need Big Brother. You need the federal government to protect you. Your state government can't protect you. The police can't protect you. You need us.
And since when do they care about criminal intent? When has that mattered in anything? If this, I've heard soldier upon soldier tell me if they would have done the same thing, they would be locked up right now for the same exact offense. And did you see Julian Assange just, he either came out with emails showing, or he said he had emails showing direct connections between her and I think it was funding ISIS, essentially.
Ooh, no, I've heard a bunch of different ones. The research that I had heard of came from a conspiracy podcast, so we'll leave that one alone. They wanted to talk about her connections to the Bohemian Grove, which does not really pertain to what we're talking about right now. So, but again, Bill on this one. First of all, I don't like him answering for Gary at any point. Like, I know that their whole thing is teamwork. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I just feel like he seems to step in front at times when he's worried about what Gary might actually say.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And you can see Gary almost perk up and be like, oh, I'm so glad Papa's got me.
Case, unless you're persuaded that the admissible evidence is sufficient to obtain and to sustain on appeal a conviction by an unbiased jury. And I don't think that test was met in this case. And Jim Comey is quite a distinguished deputy attorney general before being made director of the FBI, and I think he came to the right conclusion. And this is not a layman speaking. That was my field for a long time.
Governor Johnson, I want to ask you, last Sunday, Secretary Clinton gave an answer to Chris Wallace about her emails that fact checkers said was not true. Given that, do you understand why some 64% of registered voters find her untrustworthy?
Yeah, totally. I totally get it. And I do leave that to others. I have issues with her on all these issues, and it starts with growing government. Taxes are going to go up in a significant way. Was there anything that she didn't promise to anyone in her acceptance speech at the Democrat National Convention? And I do believe she has been an architect of our foreign policy. Libya and Syria as an example, going in supporting the opposition when the opposition, and not intentional, but the opposition is aligned with ISIS, and opposition gets wiped out, arms end up in ISIS hands. Well, this is what we do when it comes to regime changes.
From the audience, this is Michael Bernstein. He's a registered libertarian from Melville, New York. He's a management consultant. He says he's 100% supporting you.
I'm good.
Michael, what's your question?
Hi, Gary. Embracing a libertarian policy framework usually involves examining our society's vices. And, we hear a lot about the legalization of marijuana, but we don't hear a lot about more hardline libertarian positions, such as the legalization of sex work in the United States. Where do you fall on some of those more hardline policies?
Do you support decriminalization of prostitution?
Well, that ends up to be a state's issue. And if you look at that issue,
did you see him deferring on this one? If you're a constitutionalist, you believe that everybody owns their body. So it's not really a state's issue there. But
I also, let me throw this little caveat to the world. As a man, we are always paying for it every time. It just depends on how you pay for it. So I don't understand why this is illegal. Yeah, maybe just because of the age, I might want to set an age limit on it. Like, maybe we'll make 18. Like, you have to be, at least an adult. I don't know. I don't really believe in age restrictions on things, but I don't want to see a 12-year-old selling her body on the corner either. That's gross.
True. I will give you that.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. 12 and a half, grass on the field, play ball. You know what I mean? You just got to be open to, maybe some, what's the word I'm looking for? Some give and take on the. I'm sorry.
That, a little quid pro quo.
That's the one felony I will never have to worry about having. Off to this.
Nevada has done it. Prostitution is not something that I ever intend to enlist those services.
Yeah.
Got this $1.5 million for my campaign, though.
I mean, by pigeon that you can legally pay for sex in Las Vegas. You want to think that you think they're making money off this right now? Vegas just made so much. There were so many people that were like, oh, really, dude?
If I were someone to do that, where would you do that? Well, I think you would do that in Nevada, where you would know that you wouldn't catch it.
It's like you've seen
sexually transmitted disease.
I swear I haven't seen this.
When you said that, I was like, oh, I did watch this.
Says individuals own their bodies and have rights over them that other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate. And later it says, we favor the repeal of all laws creating crimes.
It's sad when the host has to read your own platform, too, to make sure you're aware of it, to make sure you know that it's not a state's issue. At least that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, he's helped him out a couple of times, if you noticed.
Hey, you still have some libertarian supporters that you have to get some money from, so say a few libertarian things.
Yeah, please.
So
you
say leave it up to the states?
Well, I agree with that. I agree with that statement. Yeah.
So you favor repealing Do you think prostitution is a victimless crime?
Currently, prostitution the victim are the prostitutes. I mean, there are a lot of victims in prostitution currently.
Well, the one that robbed me for $350.
Brought public corruption cases that was a victimless crime. Far from it. The public is the loser big time in those cases. You just can't see the crime being committed when it happens.
This is Abigail Sharkey. She's a student at Columbia University.
Wait, can you?
I
don't understand. I don't. Can you rewind that one for me?
I will do my best.
I need to reabsorb that to see how that applies to my logic, because I don't want to make sure I heard what I thought I heard from him.
So essentially what you hear is him turn it into him being a great prosecutor and completely dodged the question.
That's what I thought, but he also, it was the victimless crime part where he was almost, by stroking himself there, he almost went counter the point I thought he was making, because unless he was saying let's legalize prostitution, because what he said was tell those politicians or whatever that have gotten corruption charges from sleeping with prostitutes, whatever, that it's a victimless crime. And so, unless you're trying to say, yeah, for sure. I
think he's trying to, again, leave it open to interpretation, and then again, sell himself to the Bernie supporter of, we're really here to bring down corruption. Way for him to do both, so they can be kind of pretend that it meant both things. So they can be like, well, really isn't for prostitutes everywhere, so your grandma isn't afraid of a prostitute setting up shop down on the corner from her house. But at the same time, he could be for that still. And he gets to throw a bone to the Bernie supporters that, hey, even if you're not cool with prostitution, I still want to bring down those big bad bankers too. Yeah. Which I'm down for, but I feel like that was his way of deflecting a hard question and turning it into a talking point he likes.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Constitution currently.
People used to say when I brought public corruption cases that was a victimless crime. Far from it. The public is the loser big time in those cases. You just can't see the crime being committed when it happens.
Oh, yeah. So he didn't have anything to do with prostitution.
Columbia University. Nope. She's leaning toward voting for you, Governor Johnson.
Oh, first kind of pretty chick.
What's your question?
Thank you. Governor Johnson, as a collegiate athlete, I share and appreciate your personal commitment to living an active and healthy lifestyle. Yet there are many Americans who are shortening their lives and the lives of their children through unhealthy eating habits. Do you believe that the government has a responsibility to fight the obesity epidemic?
Unless your answer is no. How is anyone's answer yes on this?
So if the government, by that you mean the people, which it's supposed to be, then yes, the people have a responsibility to teach their fucking children better eating habits. What do you think Johnson says? I love that face of Johnson.
That's the perfect screen still frame. I want that. I want actually a poster of that above. I want Gary Johnson's vinegar strokes above my beds.
It looks like she's watching him do something. And
yeah, exactly. It's like she's watching him finish. It's fantastic. The best part of this so far. But oh my God, just this question in general is just this bothers me. We're to the point where we are asking. We can't be upset about the government wanting to be our daddy. We're fucking asking for it now.
I gotta give them kind of credit though. Like at least they're asking him to appeal to them, rather than all that Trump and Hillary have done in their political ads, which is say they're like not as scary as the person. Like they're actually giving him bones to be like, hey, don't just tell him you're not as scary. Tell him how you can relate.
Fair enough.
Hopefully he doesn't go in another Bernie direction here, with somebody that's also happened to already say they support him, just to sell a few of us out.
That government has a role. I applaud Michelle Obama when she brings out this issue. And yes, what we put in our bodies has a direct impact on our lives and the quality of life that we lead. So as President of the United States, I am going to lead by example. I have celiac disease, so food labeling for me is something that is essential. I'm allergic to gluten.
So please tell us how the free market can help you, and you don't need the FDA to say that you have to mark gluten on all the packaging. Can you talk about how all the products now say gluten-free without the FDA just because it's a hot button issue? How many foods you've eaten all your life that have always been gluten-free that now have it right there on a sticker just because it rose to show this woman how you don't need the government to take care of these issues rather than tell her how you're going to take care of these issues.
my partner, fiance Kate, promises to keep up Michelle's garden.
She really fucks Bill.
I'm sure most people in this audience know. Maybe
We
people at
co-president,
home
we
don't know.
co-hosted.
Governor Johnson
my partner
is,
fiance,
I guess, an
that's
extreme athlete. I think you
Partner?
would say.
Fiance.
Governor Weld is certainly shaking his head. You completed multiple Ironman triathlons. Correct me if I'm wrong. You bicycled 600 miles in 36 hours.
Oh, 485. I had to retract that. Back to admitting a mistake.
All right. Still, I don't think I've ever biked 485 miles in my entire life. And you summited Mount Everest as well.
Yeah, I've climbed the highest mountain on each of the 7 continents.
How many miles have you run this week?
Well, by choice, I ride bicycle these days. Mountain bike being a passion and cycling being a passion. So this week, 6 hours of that to this point.
Governor Weld, I'm not going to ask you about exercise, but what do you do to unwind? Or maybe you're
I do go to the gym. A couple of years ago, I was unsatisfied with how I felt, and I looked down and found that I weighed 235 pounds.
So my dick can do.
On a portion control.
Kind of reminds me of a less
eating a little
drunk
bit
Bush.
less, and I've lost 40 pounds.
Wow, that's great.
And that makes exercise easier as well.
Yeah.
And the takeaway from athletics, one foot in front of the other, that life is every single day. We have setbacks, and it's how we deal with those setbacks that ultimately determine success. You know, you're going to be a victim and give up, or, hey, get a smile on your face and deal with tomorrow. That's a better option, I think.
One foot in front of the other. I want to thank both governors.
Thank you.
I also want to thank our audience here and to you at home. A programming note, we want to make an exciting announcement. 2 weeks from tonight, there's going to be another CNN presidential town hall. Jill Stein, presumptive nominee of the Green Party.
And hopefully someone will get shot during that one too, so we can talk about it.
They were stabbed.
I'm just saying, what's going to happen when nobody gets hurt on Jill Stein? They're just not going to ask the question? Because it didn't seem like they just went away from their already planned question, and they were like, "Oh well, now that this violence happened, we'll just ask him about that instead. We can shelve the other question that because there's nobody in the audience asked about it."
No. Well, it just happened.
It just happened. Yeah. Well, so that's what I'm saying. Did they boot the guy? You mean to tell me they didn't already somebody to ask that question?
Oh yeah, that's what I don't think they did. I don't think Johnson was ready for that question at all. I think he thought he was done with that question.
Well, no, what I'm saying is like CNN, they compiled these questions beforehand. You mean like what I'm saying is that somebody probably was there that had a terrorism related question like that then I guess just didn't get to read their cue card or something because
they asked it the first one we watched. They actually had a lady ask about what he plans to do about, I think they asked actually the one we watched. Before the questions asked, they asked him about basically terrorism as a whole, either way, somewhere in the debate, it did happen.
Okay, and then this was more just about the lone wolf aspect of it, was because that's what they ended up talking about.
Yeah, essentially they basically got back to their talking point from the first question, which was smart, but I think what they were looking for there is for them to be caught off guard by some like happening shit. Whereas I would just be like, well, did you say it happened in France? That's a shame. I'll send them some flowers. Like, I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah,
like,
it's pretty shitty out in France right now.
Yeah, like, it was too long of an answer. That's for sure. Did you come out of this? I definitely didn't come out of it with any more hope for Gary Johnson than I had to begin with.
I came out of it just further grounded in my stance that a lot of this just feels like a TV show now. I feel like I'm just watching MTV. Yeah, no, I don't feel good about Gary. I haven't felt good about Gary. I don't feel good. I hope that we can survive 4 years and get another shot. That's really my best case scenario at this point is let's survive whatever happens because I'm not going to like it either way. Yeah. And hopefully somebody besides Kanye runs in 2020.
Dude, he's already got Sucker Mag's endorsement.
Yeah.
I'm not far behind with this fucking competition. Two narcissists have already made it. He stands a chance.
Oh yeah.
He really does.
By the time at this rate,
Trump versus Hillary is actually I hope that Hillary loses this when Trump wins, and then 2020 we see Kanye versus Hillary versus Trump.
You know, all the Bernie supporters are going to support Kanye, because if there's anyone who's going to do away with student loan and any and all debt, it's that dude who hasn't paid back a single debt ever in his life, even though he makes millions upon millions.
Yeah. Well, equally as poor at managing his business as Trump would seem to be. So, you know, he can make it there. And it could end up Johnson versus Kanye.
That's the beauty of a limited liability corporation. The business goes bankrupt, but you get to keep all the money you made off of it.
Oh,
that's just good business.
Tips from a banker. And on that note, this was 60 Grit Radio. Be sure to check out all the Bad Dinner Guest Network's programs. You guys just had a real interesting. You want to tell them about that?
Oh yeah, well we did a review of the Suicide Squad and Killing Joke for any of my fellow nerds out there. We also, if you've got a tinfoil hat in the closet, we finally wrapped up our 2-part series on Ruby Ridge, Waco, and the Oklahoma City bombing, which, you know, can tie directly into some of the issues you talked about today, because domestic terrorism really started in the early 90s. And so in order for you to understand what's going on right now, it might be good to know what happened before that led us to this point.
Yeah. I haven't got to watch that one yet. I was fortunate enough to be in the room for your Suicide Squad review, and I'm not into any of the comic book shit, and I found that to be really entertaining still. So I hope they check that shit out. But definitely check out the Ruby Ridge shit, because that's definitely going to be up anybody that's listening to this alley.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, this is RJ. That's Kevin, and we are out of here.